that. Okay, thank you. Now we're down to, I think perhaps at this point, I would suggest maybe that, there again, 3 of you have Eric and 3 of you have Ron in your top 3, and I would suggest that you speak to why, and you don't have to have been the one either that had them in the top 3, but to speak to why you think you'd like to see either one of them come back next week. Remember, we really think you ought to bring back 3, so.
Well, when I look at the 2 of them, you know, we're debating between Eric and Ron. Some of the things that I liked about Eric, I liked his I think Kevin, you mentioned it, I like the cultural fit is imperative for me. I think that's a big piece, and I saw that in him. But one of the things that really resonated with me is I view him, you know, so I like Carson because he's superintendent and he has that experience, and so does, you know, Ron to some degree, and Eric has that experience. And one of the things that I felt that he perhaps brings is a non-traditional way of leading. And he talked and spoke a lot about leadership. And so he kind of resonated with me perhaps a bit more, or more than Ron. I just liked his style. I liked his approach. I liked his drive for excellence. You know, and the 3 questions, what would he do? To me, they were spot on. Communication critical. You know, recognize our blueprint 81 hasn't been updated since July. Second one was operating efficiencies, so that do better with less. And the third one, the academic performance. So those were really key that he spoke of. But really, again, focus on a team of excellence, inspire to achieve excellence. Okay, so I kind of saw him as non-traditional, someone that could take us to that next level versus the traditional path. You know, I started as a teacher, and I did this, and did that, and worked my way up, and now I'm a superintendent. He's had all these experiences, been very global, and I see that he's the one that can, I think they can all lead the district, but I think he's, in my mind, is one that could take us that next step over Ron. Ron has a lot of great experiences too. And if I was him, I'd want to get out of Minneapolis as well. But he just really resonated with me in that leadership style and a non-traditional ability to really, I think, advance us and get us towards that excellence versus.
So I'll dovetail on that, if that's okay. Or Ruth, you want to go? Go ahead.
Okay, I feel a lot the same way you do. His energy that he had, and I think he could.
Who?
His market, Eric.
Talk about Eric.
Yeah, I'm talking about Eric. His energy, I think he could market this district better than any of, well, as well, or better than Karsten or Ron could market this district, actually. Also, I just liked how he really listened to the questions and he really gave complete answers. I mean, he thought about it and he did it.
Yeah, he articulated very well.
Yes, and then, you know, his commitment to clear goal setting, he'd begin in June to learn about the district, and he was looking for a home and committed to multiple contracts. I like that too.
Yeah, 3 to 4.
The other thing I want to say is we all got an email today, and I don't know if that had any impact on those low scores, but I did send it to you and you guys said you would check that stuff out, so.
And we have.
We have, and,
It's-
there's, we weren't aware of it until today,
Okay.
but that happened in a previous search. We learned that. Would have known that prior to today, would have told you that that's a possibility, but there is somebody, in the Minnetonka district, from all we can hear, as we hear, from very good sources, who just really have faith for him, you know, and it's not the first time we've seen this happen. It on occasion does.
Well, if those people are listening, I for one don't respond well to character assassination by email.
And by anonymous on
Anonymous.
top of it.
And I think
Well, this one.
No, this
wasn't-
was not anonymous.
It wasn't
Oh,
anonymous.
wasn't?
I just
No, it was
didn't send it to you.
secondhand from
I'm sorry.
people with common knowledge, and I'm the spokesperson for these people with common knowledge, right?
Yeah.
well, and I
So-
think he addressed the issue in his interview.
He did.
And
Part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then just one other thing I'll say about him is, and this may be, tell me if I shouldn't say this, but I have a close friend who worked with him at Minnetonka and had really good things to say about him. So,
Insight's insight.
That's valuable.
okay,
Yeah.
So from a disclosure perspective, I'm just gonna say, that Eric and Heidi are my top two. I can own my own ballot, I don't have any problem with that. And I specifically ranked them as my top two, not just because of qualifications, presentation, and all those lenses that I talked about, but I love the idea that it gives us two very distinct choices, because I think Heidi comes with a very unique set of strengths and potential weaknesses based on proximity to the district, history in the district, which is can cut both ways. And then on the other side, I see Eric as a disruptor that challenges the status quo. I think that dovetails kind of with what Tom was talking about. And I like the idea of at least examining the idea of what that could mean to our school district. So that was my thought process behind my ranking. And I completely disregard the email as hogwash as far as I'm concerned.
they were my one too, so. They get reverse order, but they still, I can see up there.
Anybody else want to talk about either?
There are quite 4, 5, and 6, and we're.
Well, we spent a lot of time on Eric,
Only
but-
got, the lowest he got was a 5. So, I mean, there are some strong people that are too excited about Eric, so I think
Yeah.
we should hear some of that too.
Actually, a little bit more so than Ron, there's a 5.
We haven't really gotten to Ron. We've heard a lot about extolling the virtues of Eric and defending his honor, but we haven't heard about the concerns, right?
Feel free, anybody who would like to talk about either one of them.
And Ron had second place and then third places.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're not big, they're really close.
Well, and they're both really good.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the issue. This is, when it takes a lot of time to decide, it's a good thing. Because there's a lot of support from candidates, so.
Any other comments?
Again, I'm loath to move on to Ron until we hear more of the negatives about Eric that don't have to do with an email.
At this stage, I'd rather see us bring Eric back than Ron. I just like the non-traditional, just, I'm not gonna repeat the same things that I've already said. I believe he can advance us to that next level and not be status quo.
Well, in fairness to Ron, then let's move to Ron maybe and talk about him a little. I mean, does not appear 4, 5, and 6 want to talk about Eric very much, so that's okay. I don't want to pull people out. But what I would say is this, on Ron was his passion was palpable. It was amazing.
Yeah.
High energy guy. In the private sector world, that guy's got a place on my team. I just didn't feel like his experience was as precise a match as what we were looking for the reasons that we kind of talked about before this. But again, splitting hairs, right? To say that was the margin of difference for me between him and as I'm trying to figure out my 3, 4, 5.
those two are very close for me as well. And it's a little tricky, I don't necessarily have anything horrible to say about either of them. I guess if I look at it through the lens of the staff, faculty, and administration, as well as the students, I would feel Ron would be more of a fit for what I see. I would worry that, well, I guess I would feel that Ron would help. I would feel that he would help perpetuate careers and encourage them, lift them up, build into them. Not that Eric wouldn't, I didn't hear that. Eric seemed more like an idea guy, which is great as well. But I had Ron rated higher than Eric. But mainly that he seems that, I'll admit there's a comfort that I felt with Ron as well. I'm going to that immediacy again. I also felt that one of the better answers provided in terms of the financial piece was Ron, his response. And then also, I felt that he had a very applicable understanding of the finances and that aspect of a school district as well as a large school district. But also more importantly, what I had written was the here and now of the realities of the finances within the state system. Whereas Eric wasn't, again, he didn't do a bad job of that, but he wasn't able to tie that together for me in terms of where we are now, where the state is now, and then the realities of that funding mechanism. Ron had a more clear understanding of that from my end, but I would admit that that's not my strength. But as a layperson, I guess when it comes to that, he was able to articulate that well.
I can piggyback on that because I had that same sense too, and I did rank him a little higher when he was able to articulate, enrollment, efficiency, and, some sort of operating levy are the three levers that you have, and just articulate how you align things within your budget to your priorities. It felt like that came from a very natural position of having given that a lot of thought and probably practice for me, and it was, for me, just understanding the number of staff that he works with and the number of schools within that district, and just knowing how diverse that is, to be able to manage that on a day-to-day is probably fairly challenging, and still come up with new programs and new ideas. So for me, his experience was a good balance of innovation without it being disruptive, where it was more of a mix of we'll do some systematic change, but not something that's going to be overly disruptive. And that's why I think Eric, and I can't believe I'm even saying this because I love innovation, I'm a pioneer thinker, but I know my downfall is I see that vision and I don't always build a bridge for people to get there. And so I worry a little bit that there's great ideas there, and I think there's great energy behind that, that it can also be really disruptive to the district. If there isn't balance.
Yeah, to your point on specifically on the finance stuff, the quote I wrote down from him was aligning the budget to the values, and that did definitely resonate with me from him.
With Ron on the question number 9, what were the first 3 things you would do? I got number one, is that dealing with the community and staff. And I got number four, something about business management, but I couldn't decipher what number 2 or 3 was, and I don't know if anybody else has that.
Which number are you looking at?
It's
It's
written
question number
down.
9.
Multi-tiered systems of support, equity, and social emotional learning. I had a little trouble figuring it, because I wrote
That was
5
number
things down.
4.
I wrote down the healing and the physical, like you said, but in between, so I wasn't exactly sure what the 1, 2, 3 was, but I heard 5 things out of there: healing, multi-tiered systems of support, equity, social emotional learning, and physical.
You know, I didn't run for this position to be popular. And it's not my goal with the community necessarily. I want to be collaborative and make sure everybody has a voice at the table. And the 3 people that get here, it's really neat that we're gonna have all these other people there. And so I would say the same thing across the board. What I was elected to do was to represent the taxpayer and to protect the learning environment and create the best possible outcomes for kids and whatever, right? So I'm kind of with Sarah on the disruption thing. I'm in love with it, love disruption. So where Eric resonated very deeply with me was 2 spots. One was, he used 2 words that smacked me right in the forehead, and those 2 words were customer service. Now, I think if he was the next ISD 181 superintendent, it would be the job of this board to make sure he understands the definition of customer. And we see this in the private sector all the time, where people think of customers as being external entities. And there's not a lot of attention paid to internal customers, which are arguably as important, if not more important, than your external customers. So I'm not sure what he meant exactly when he said that, but it definitely resonated. But to me, it would be critical that, it's not just the guy on the street with 3 kids in our school, or the woman, that has 2 kids at Forest View or whatever. It's the people in the back of this room and the people they represent within their specific sites and whatever. So, that's equal parts exciting and concerning for me. And then the second thing that I liked was he had the guts to come in here and point out things based on research he did that were deficient. The fact that we don't have a strategic plan published on our website. The fact that, correct his statement, the last Blueprint 181 update that's clickable on our website is from July. That is true.
He
Check it
did
out.
the most research of any of them.
And maybe I'm a sucker, but that impresses me when people do that. Where a couple of different candidates came in, kind of like, what do you think of Brainerd? I think it's, it's in the middle of the state. And I like the idea that somebody took the time to look at positives and negatives of the district before they came and sat here, and it showed that he definitely did his homework before he showed up in front of us. And Ron did too, don't get me wrong, Ron had a lot of good points as well.
The customer service, I wrote that down as well, that resonated with me, and the fact that he called us out on no strategic plan, it tells me that, well, how in the world can you operate a district without a plan? And there was one other candidate, I have to go back, that kind of alluded to that as well. But, and again, that's why I look at someone that can take us to that next level versus status quo, not that we're necessarily status
Heidi
quo.
mentioned it.
I went into somebody's.
Yeah, she did, she did. And I like calculated disruption. If we're unwilling to challenge ourselves and to create some, I hate to use the word chaos, because in my business line, I know it can sometimes create chaos, but it pushes us further. It pushes us to be great rather than just continuing to be good. And that's not something that I liked about Eric, again, over Ron, as I look at the 2 of them. Ron, very traditional, great guy, but very traditional.
And one other lens, as I think about it, right, is we talk about the shoes that they have to fill. I mean, the lens I was looking through was, can this candidate take the best of Lane Larson and carry it forward? Can this candidate take the worst of Lane Larson and improve upon it? Because everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Nobody's Superman. But to the extent that we can create something, because we know, like I said, there's nobody in this room that has a negative feeling towards Lane that I'm aware of. She's a fantastic leader, just what this district needed when we needed it. And she'll go down in history as one of the greatest leaders this district has had. So I don't mean that to impugn her in any way whatsoever, right? But to say that there were certain things she wasn't great at, and it's created some situations in the district that, that's a lens I'm looking through. And Eric's gonna have the hardness of nose, for lack of a better way to say it, to get in there and root around in there. But to Charles's point, you can take that too far. And you can create additional disruption, discord, and other issues. And again, that's where we have to be very mindful, no matter who comes in here, that we're watching for that. I suspect that may be what happened in, a couple of hires ago, to a certain extent.
One thing that, as we drill down a little bit more on the two, and as I went through some of my notes, I'll admit I don't take a ton of notes. I write down things when there's a concern or a particular positive thing. Ron, it's important that as we look at Brainerd, from where I sit at least, we don't look at Brainerd just where we are today, but we look at Brainerd in terms of where we can be and where we will be even 10, 15 years down the road. And when you look at the growth corridor for Minnesota, we're still on the northern end of that growth corridor. With that comes a lot of people that don't necessarily look or sound like many of you. And so we need to make sure that we're accounting for that. And not even looks and sounds, but live their life the same as we maybe do here in Brainerd today. But it's imperative that that's at least considered with the leader, especially this particular leader, as we look to somebody to lead us into that future.
Can you see that again or explain it differently?
What I'm saying is in talking to leadership over at Essentia Health, we have a struggle with bringing in medical service providers in terms of nurses, for example. So that's a struggle, and increasing even today after COVID, on the heels of COVID. We don't have the number of nurses in our community the way it is today, moving forward, the concern. What either is gonna happen is we gotta continue to grow our own nurses, and I know you know this, I'm just making a point, in-house, or we import from outside the community. And a lot of those individuals, if you even look at the college, are coming from the cities to our school here at Central Lakes College, for example, to become nurses. And more and more of those people at Central Lakes College aren't looking like any of us in this community. Meaning they might be Somali, or they might be Latino or Latina. And we need to make sure that we're considering that reality of our future as well. Which is part of the reason why we look at equity, but not just skin color or the way we speak, but also lifestyle and that type as well. So I'm just saying that that's an important reality to where we're gonna be to be able to continue to tap into workforce that's gonna be sustainable. Not only sustainable but for what we have, but sustainable for if we wanna continue to grow in the Brainerd Lakes area. Now I know not all people want to grow in this area, but the reality is we probably will. So I'm not here to discuss whether we should or shouldn't, but the reality is we probably will. And if we're going to, we need to make sure that part of that is we prepare our community and our school for that. If not that, to at least to be a global player outside of the Brainerd Lakes area, because we send so many of our students outside of the Brainerd Lakes area. One of our greatest exports in the Brainerd Lakes area is our young people. So we need to make sure that we're preparing them to go out into the world and to succeed and to be comfortable in that environment. So that's what I'm saying is.
So can you help me connect the dots? And I think I'm following, but connect the dots for me then, the discussion between Ron and Eric of.
I'll get there. So,
Sorry.
So my point is that Ron, his answers, that equity and that attention to difference and that importance was baked into most of his responses. Where if you go through the tape and you listen to his responses, he was touching that throughout his responses, which is important. I mean, am I gonna make a person the superintendent or choose for that just because they spoke eloquently or positively about the importance of equity? No. But if we're drilling down in terms of those two candidates to decide who's our third, that's a significant piece for me with Ron. Whereas Eric, as I look back at what I wrote, he wrote, or he said, one thing, I wrote, okay answer, which is a little nervy for me. And then he wrote, he said, commitment to equity is commitment to the future. So I would probably say, which is a good statement, but it's kind of a tagline type thing as well. So it was good to say, and I'm glad he said it, but that was also one of his shortest answers, in his interview. So now, is that gonna keep him from being our superintendent? No. Can we continue to advocate for those type of things regardless of who our superintendent is? Absolutely. But if we're looking at the two in terms of wanting to, again, drill down with those two, that's a significant piece for me, with those two.
Thank you. One of the things I wrote down with Eric on that is he made a statement about, are we a welcoming community, and then he kind of expanded on that, whether it's in our schools and restaurants, what kind of community are we from a welcoming standpoint? Certainly Ron touched on it several times, I agree.
Ron has more experience because he works in the Minneapolis school district with diversity. But Eric also did say that when he was in California, it was 35% Hispanic. And one of the things he was very proud of was when his principal closed the achievement gap between the Hispanic population. So, he has had experience in it too, which is maybe more than you can say for what's happening in Minneapolis, but.
I appreciate, as always, my friend, your lens. It challenges me to think in different directions a little bit. I would never dispute that. I would say that Ron was more effective in communicating, to steal a word from Ron, thread of equity through a variety of his answers. In fact, one could argue, go back and trace those answers by his use of the word thread, because it was always tied to equity. And you said it no less than 7 times to my count. So I'm not picking on that, but it was a nice marker to show that he did talk about it a lot more, and that you can tell that it was central to his approach to his strategy for marketing himself to us.
One thing the last thing, there's one piece, again, is in the thread of drilling down with those two, and I know this is making us later, but I sure appreciate being able to process it. Is that, and I guess I just need to be upfront, as an Indigenous person, I thought it was really neat on some levels that he said his son was Apache. I thought that was really neat. However, and I can't expect you to live in my world with this, but maybe just asking you to step into this reality once in a while, just a bit, is he didn't reference in my mind about his other son or his other child and the ethnicity of that child. And so as an American Indian person, I'm always a little bit sensitive in terms of tokenism, or being, hey, we got that one handsome American Indian school board member, right? But just the reality is that's something that I guess a bit of an alarm went off on that. That compared with some of the other realities of maybe what he didn't say. And the fact that got him a sweet deal at University of Morris, or Minnesota Morris. So, which is all neat, but to me, he left something on the table there, and it seemed glaring to me. Does that mean he's gonna be a bad superintendent? No. I'm really working to try to drill down on those two. I don't know if I would have said it if it wasn't down to 2 people.
Anyone else?
But at this point, unless somebody wants anything to add, we have 2 ways to go. And One is somebody make a statement, you think you ought to do this, and the majority agrees, you know, you're done. If you're not comfortable with that, what we have done several times at this point is just to do another straw poll and hope it doesn't end 3-3. But that's up to you.
Can I ask a logistical question? Let's say we choose 3 to come back. We lose 2, we find out that, you know what I mean, that we come down to it. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, say we lose all 3, say we end up with offers are extended or they go somewhere else, what happens if none of the 3 are
Reach a
options?
culmination in the
Do we
negotiations.
fail a search, or do we get the option to go back to, say, another candidate? You know, like right now, so we're wrestling between an Eric and a Ron, for example. And I'm not saying that could ever happen, but my mind just process-wise needs to know, if we got ourselves in that situation where none of the 3 were available to us, do we get to go back, or
Sure.
even
We can
if we
start the
wouldn't
search
want to?
over if we want.
Well, I know we can fail the search, that's of course an option, but could we, and I'm not saying it would be best practice, but could we go, well, gosh, we really debated over Eric and Ron quite a bit, let's now bring Eric or Ron back for a second
Sure, we
interview.
could.
Well, of course.
Yeah, we could, if
Okay.
we
From a-
want to, if they're still
Right,
available, sure.
but I didn't know, cause there
But
are
from
rules
a
about it, so I
realistic
didn't know if-
perspective, you know, I mean, what I would say is your
Probably not gonna
leverage,
get back.
right?
Oh, right, I just needed to
Yeah.
know what the.
I've been in
rules
that
are.
role again, of late, trying to hire software developers, and I've been in that exact role.
Mhm.
And it's lose-lose almost
Yeah, and
every
I'm not
single
saying it's a
time.
good idea even, I just need
No,
to
I can
understand
appreciate
what,
it.
cause we said some places that would be considered a fail search, if you lost all your 3, you wouldn't have the option to go back, you just fail it and start over.
Well, we don't, we would be shocked, to say the least, if
Right.
you, frankly, if you lose any of the 3, we'd be really surprised. I'm just gonna be honest with you on that. I can't imagine, I've never seen it happen in 14 years.
Well, they can get offered a job
One,
in another
well,
district, right?
Right.
and
They haven't
say,
seen us
right,
negotiate
but
salaries.
We also have pretty good knowledge about what else is going on in our world, so, you know, so I'd say that with some knowledge. And frankly, we've never had a district ever go back to one of those who didn't come back. I think it would be hard. It would be hard, it would be a tough message publicly.
Yeah, I'm not
I
saying it's a
think
good idea.
that
I
the
just-
candidate would probably not feel comfortable, because they would come in a little asterisk kind of, and nobody wants to start that way. But having said that, I don't think you have a problem, I really don't. So, what do you think in terms of, do you wanna make a suggestion, or do you wanna do another
Well,
poll?
unless someone's changed their ranking, it's gonna be 3-3, so.
Yeah, so, and we don't know who did what, so,
Yes, we do.
Well, when I look at the,
well,
I look,
in some cases we do, and some we don't.
when I look at the numbers, I look at Ron being in that middle of the road. No 6s, no 1s. When I look at Eric, we've got high marks and low marks. It's very interesting.
I agree,
Thinking about
but
in our 4th time, we've never had that
Yeah, I
before.
don't remember that either.
No, sure not.
You could try a vote and see where it gets us. Or a straw.
I'd like to see us bring, Eric back myself, like, for reasons I stated.
I concur with Director Haglund.
And that's why I would bring back the 2 of them.
My preference between those 2 would be for Ron, to bring Ron back.
Mine would be for Ron.
Ha.
There you go.
That's why I went quick.
I know, and I've been quiet about it because I'm not sure, so my thoughts are, and may or may not be popular, but my thoughts are along what Tom just said. In my mind, I look right now at where the numbers lie. I have a hard time, and this is just where I'm sitting. I have a hard time imagining Ron winning us over and becoming number 1 because of where the middle ground is. I think that there's a lot of curiosity about Eric with the spread of scores. And to me, then that's, let's learn more about that person.
So in practical terms, what are you saying?
Eric.
So, go that way? Okay, and as, you know, you're right, I mean, next week, you're gonna learn a lot more, and some are gonna rise, some are gonna fall, some are gonna stay the same, you just don't know. And that's our experience, so, and, you know, this was a good discussion, it was difficult, but it was difficult for good reason. They're both good candidates, there's no question about it, and, you
Yeah,
know.
I think
so-
we had 6 good candidates.
Yeah, the likability scale is off the chart with all of these people.
Yeah, no, they're all,
Yeah, that's true.
that's what we're going to continue to be.
Good candidate.
Yeah, like I said, you guys did a really, really good job bringing us 6 people.
Thank you.
So you want the resumes of the 3 that we
Yeah,
already met?
your notes and,
I
the
have to.
presentation materials of the 3 who are not coming back, just give those to Janet, and she'll have those shredded.
Oh, okay, so.
And,
What do we need again?
we need
Just
a
anything we're
motion.
not using going forward, right?
right, the one that, the 3 are not moving.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Oh, wait, do we need a motion?
Oh, do we need
For the-
So we need a motion to accept the candidates?
Yeah, motion to
It's
accept.
Carson, Eric,
Did you make that motion, Charlie?
I think, did you make it?
I'll move for that slate of candidates.
I'll second.
Okay, first from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Boyle to approve the slate of Karsten, Eric, and Heidi. As our candidates, any discussion, further discussion? All in
I
favor?
have something super quick. I actually got a minute. Thank you to everybody. I really appreciate the open dialogue. It's an honor to work with all of you. That's it.
I'll do it.
We will, we're going to do another rule right now to call all 6 candidates. We will then, as quickly as possible, let Janet know who's going to be here on that day next week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah,
And so we'll sit down and do that about 4:30 or so.
perfect. Good work,
Thanks.
thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Do we have a motion, oh, Sjogren and Boyles, and all yeses for the slate of candidates. You know who they are?
Yeah, Patty just.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
I don't remember. Was it me?
We're going in a room
Boyles?
to call.
Oh, sure.
Director Boyles?
We can go back and watch the
I'll
tape.
set this to.
Let's redo it.
Yes, please, let's go.
It's gonna go off by having an extra comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.